Welcome back to Capital Tonight, a statewide look at politics. I'm Tim Boehm. After the attacks in Paris and San Bernardino in December, there was concern about terrorists entering the United States posing as refugees from Syria. The U.S. House passed a bill that would strengthen vetting rules for refugees. That bill is sponsored by 8th District Congressman Richard Hudson. Yesterday, I caught up with Hudson about that bill. Here is the conversation. Congressman, as always, thank you so much for joining us. We saw what happened with the Senate yesterday, but let's back up a little bit. Just tell us about this American Safe Act first.
Well, thanks, Tim. It's great to be with you again. The American Safe Act was a very simple, bipartisan, common sense solution to deal with this issue of Syrian refugees. The president announced he wanted 10,000 additional refugees brought in from Syria. We had the FBI director appointed by President Obama who told us that we can't do adequate background checks on most of these Syrians because you basically can't go verify with third parties in a war zone when you don't have a government you can talk to. And so what we looked for was a reasonable path that said let's pause the process for Iraqi and Syrian refugees until we can put a process in place that the FBI director feels confident.
What process could be put in place that basically wouldn't be what some are saying crippling red tape?
Yeah, it's funny. The critics of this say that both it will do nothing and it will create so much red tape that the government will grind to a halt. So not sure, the truth must be somewhere in between. But basically all we're asking is for a pause in the flow until we can establish criteria, a background check that the FBI feels comfortable with. And I was very careful when I wrote this bill, Tim, to not tell the FBI how to do a background check. They're the experts. I'm not the expert on it. But we want one that the FBI director has confidence in because he has said, testifying before Congress, that he is in the current process.
So this is common sense, bipartisan. Why do you think it didn't get through the Senate?
Well, we did get a two-thirds bipartisan vote out of the House back in November, but I believe, unfortunately, American public has sort of moved on. Maybe they're not paying attention to what's happening this week in the Senate. The president did issue a veto threat back in November. He issued a veto threat about a day after I filed the bill. He's issued threats on about 75% of the legislation we brought to the House floor, so it's not a surprise that he would issue that veto threat, but I feel like he did it a little prematurely because at the time 75% of the American people wanted to see this kind of solution, and so my hope was if we could get some reasonable Democrats to join the Republicans in the Senate, that we could pass this, again in a bipartisan way, and maybe the president would reconsider and listen to the American people.
All right, Congressman, another thing we've heard from critics, a former director of the National Counterterrorism Center, was that this plays into ISIS's false message that we are at war with all Muslims rather than terrorist groups. What are you telling folks that believe that?
Well, it's puzzling to hear that comment and to hear the White House spokesman, Josh Earnest, continue to talk about some kind of religious test. They're basically playing a straw man that doesn't exist. This bill doesn't talk about religious litmus test, doesn't talk about religion at all. There are some out there who've called for a ban of all Muslims, a ban of all refugees. What this legislation simply says is let's focus on Syria and Iraq, and let's put a pause on all refugees until we have a process in place. There is no religious test.
Do you see this as sort of in the middle of what President Obama wants and what we heard from Donald Trump?
You could characterize it that way. I understand where Donald Trump's coming from. It's like my granddaddy used to say, if there's a hole in the bucket, you turn off the spigot first, then fix the hole in the bucket. And so, saying let's stop all Muslims until we can fix this. I just think it's much more effective, rather than trying to target a religious group or any particular group, to target the countries that we're worried about, the countries where there's a heavy ISIS presence, and in this case, particularly Syria and Iraq. I just think we're going to be much more effective in stopping this threat until we can put a process in place if we target the places they're coming from.
So what's next? We saw what's happened with the Senate. What do you think is next?
Well, it's up to the American people. At this point, the American people need to let their representatives in the Senate know how important this is to them. And so I'm going to continue to talk about this. I'm going to continue to try to raise people's awareness because the threat is out there. The Director of National Intelligence told us the Monday after this bill passed the House that we know of various individuals, numerous individuals affiliated with ISIS who have already attempted to infiltrate our country using this refugee process. We know that this is a threat that's out there, and so I'm going to keep talking about it. If folks watching us here today agree with me, I hope they'll write and call the senators. You know, our 2 senators here in North Carolina are good on this issue, but there are 4 Democrats out there I'm still hunting to get them to join us and make this a bipartisan effort to protect the American people.
For those that don't follow the procedure, then, this bill isn't dead because of this vote. It still can come back.
This vote today was whether or not we could end the filibuster and bring this bill to the Senate floor. And so we only got 2 Democrats to join the 54 Republicans. And so we're a few votes short of being able to start the debate on this bill. So the bill's not dead. It's still, the American people just need to make their voices known that if this is something that they still care about.
All right, Congressman, I know your time is precious. We thank you so much. Good to see you as always.
Thank you, Tim. Take care.